All right. Hey, YouTube, I'm Lucky, and in today's news story, we're covering Bungie fixing what was probably one of the most fun things to do in the game currently, which was farm the Master Dungeon for infinite Pinnacle drops. Now, you might be thinking initially, of course, that was going to be a bug. Of course, that's not working as intended, but a lot of people thought it was, and I'll go ahead and show you in just a minute a Bungie dev thread on Twitter that was pretty confusing. Right now, as of 6 minutes ago, we have Bungie Help tweeting out saying we have resolved an issue where Pinnacle gear was dropping more than once per week in the master version of the Duality Dungeon. Starting today, Pinnacle gear will drop once per week per character in the master dungeon. Repeated clears will drop powerful gear. So keep that in mind. Before it was dropping a Pinnacle from each one. So obviously a ton of people were doing the new dungeon, especially the master difficulty. And it's definitely not easy to beat that. So it felt like it was appropriately rewarding to have that happen, but clearly not as intended. Now we'll move on to the most confusing thread I may have ever read on the Twitter machine here. We've got Bungie community manager Liana Rupert here, and this was a question that was asked, which is the Master Duality Dungeon is still dropping Pinnacle gear after completing the dungeon, right? Very straightforward. Was this intended by any chance or a bug at Dirty F and Hippie? And then the response is, you can learn more here in our previous TWAB. And then we read this entire section where the TLDR is just that you can repeatedly farm loot in the TWAB, right? You can repeatedly farm loot. But it doesn't say anything about infinite Pinnacle farming, which is the question that's asked, you know? Like, the question isn't like loot farm, it's infinite Pinnacle farm. And then someone very kindly says, not to be rude, but this doesn't answer the question. We know the loot is intended to be farmable. The question is in regard to Pinnacle loot being farmable. And then Liana says, the portion after this specifically talks about the Pinnacle, which is why I linked to the TWAB. And if you actually go and read that section, it actually does not talk about infinite Pinnacle loot, you know, in the dungeon, because clearly that would be huge and everyone would be talking about that because that changes the entire game. Like, why would I ever play Gambit for Pinnacles if I can do the dungeon, right? Like, why I would never do any Pinnacles other than just grind out the dungeon a bunch until I hit max gear score. So it's like huge. And instead of just saying a simple yes or no, there was like this really weird just response and like workaround and like, go look at the TWAB, go read the TWAB. So it was like really confusing. So but now we finally get an answer to that, and the confusion is over. It was a bug, was not working as intended. So if you were able to exploit that, good for you. But it is gone now, and hopefully you got to 1570 in the process. If you didn't, well, make sure you subscribe with notifications on. I'll keep you up to date on the next bug that happens. Smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.